Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Soham Vashanapi Vibhabahu Dukkha Vasham Garbhananajigamishe Bahirandakupe यत्रोपयातं उपसर्पति देवमाया मिथ्यमतिर्यदनु संस्कृति चक्रमेतत् Srimad Bhagavatam, Canto 3, Chapter 31, Text 20. Saham, Saha Aham, I myself, Vasan, living, Api, although, Vibhu, O Lord, Bahu Dukha, with many miseries, Vasam, in a condition, Garbhat, from the abdomen, Na, not, Nijjigam Gamishe, I wish to depart, Bahihi, outside, Andakupe, in the blind well, Yatra, where, Upayatam, one who goes there, Upasarpati, she captures Devamaya, the external energy of the Lord, Mithya, false, Mati, identification, Yat, which Maya, Anu, according to Samshruti of continual birth and death, Chakram, cycle, Etat, this. Translation. Therefore, my Lord, although I'm living in a terrible condition, I do not wish to depart from my mother's abdomen to fall again into the blind well of materialistic life. Your external energy, called Deva Maya, at once captures the newborn child and immediately false identification, which is the beginning of the cycle of continual birth and death, begins. So, translation by His Divine Grace, Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai. Therefore, my Lord, although I'm living in a terrible condition, I do not wish to depart from my mother's abdomen to fall again into the blind well of materialistic life. Your external energy, called Deva Maya, at once captures the newly born child and immediately false identification, which is the beginning of the cycle of continual birth and death, begins. Purport by His Divine Grace, A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai. As long as the child is within the womb of his mother, he is in a very precarious and horrible condition of life. But the benefit is that he revives pure consciousness of his relationship with the Supreme Lord and prays for deliverance. But once he is outside the abdomen, when a child is born, Maya, or the illusory energy, is so strong that he is immediately overpowered into considering his body to be his self. Maya means illusion, or that which is actually not. In the material world, everyone is identifying with his body. This false egoistic consciousness of I am this body at once develops after the child comes out of the womb. The mother and other relatives are awaiting the child, and as soon as he is born, the mother feeds him and everyone takes care of him. The living entity soon forgets his position and becomes entangled in bodily relationships. The entire material existence is entanglement in this bodily conception of life. Real knowledge means to develop the consciousness of I am not this body, I am spirit soul, an eternal part and parcel of the Supreme Lord. Real knowledge entails renunciation or non-acceptance of this body as a self. By the influence of Maya, the external energy, one forgets everything just after birth. Therefore, the child is praying that he prefers to remain within the womb rather than come out. It is said that Sukadev Goswami, on this consideration, remained for 16 years within the womb of his mother. He did not want to be entangled in false bodily identification. After cultivating such knowledge within the womb of his mother, He came out at the end of 16 years, and immediately left home so that he might not be captured by the influence of Maya. The influence of Maya is also explained in Bhagavad Gita as insurmountable. But insurmountable Maya can be overcome simply by Krishna consciousness. That is also confirmed in Bhagavad Gita 7:14. Mameva prapadyante mayam etam tarantite. Whoever surrenders unto the lotus feet of Krishna can get out of this false conception of life. By the influence of Maya, by the influence of Maya only, one forgets his eternal relationship with Krishna and identifies himself with his body and the byproducts of the body, namely wife, children, society, friendship, and love. Thus, he becomes a victim of the influence of Maya, and his materialistic life of continued birth and death becomes still more stringent. Again, Prabhupada is giving us a very, very strong message. And in this verse, in this purport, as well as the purports we've been reading over the last several days, and it's driving home the point again and again, the importance of human life and how forgetfulness creeps in very, very conditionally, very, very, very quickly through conditioning in this material life of ours. Hare Krishna. Om Ajnanatimirandasya Gnananjana Shalakya Chakshurunmilitam Yena Tasmai Sri Guruve Namaha Shri Chaitanya Manobhishtam Stapitam Yena Bhutale Swayam Rupa Kadamayam Dadati Swapadantikam Vanchakalpatarubhyascha Kripa Sindhubhya Cha Patitanam Pavanebhyo Vaishnavebhyo Namo Namaha Jai Sri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhara Shivasadi Gaura Bhakta Vrinda Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare. So we're reading from verse 20, chapter 31 of Canto 3 of the Srimad Bhagavatam, Lord Kapila's instructions on the movements of the living entities. So this verse describes how the conditioned soul, now taking birth, experiences the shock of entering the world, just as a bird forced out of its cage into an unknown forest. The bird is in its nest along with its mother, coming and feeding it, every now and then, with multiple siblings as well. It's in the comfort of that nest, and all of a sudden that bird is being forced out from that nest. It's just like that, into that world that it is not, even aware of, and it's completely alien to the little bird. And so the bird begins crying due to the discomfort and the fear of the new bodily condition. So the broader theme for this verse is, the helplessness of the jiva upon taking birth, and the deep conditioning, as Prabhupada is saying, the conditioning is almost immediate. However, the underscoring root cause is forgetfulness. Every January, and it's coming up, a person vows, may have all different kinds of vows. A person may vow, okay, I'm going to eat healthy, I'm going to go exercise regularly, I'm going to be, doing less of my scrolling on the phone on a daily basis, right? Or even for that matter, for devotees, it's about chanting, about reading, about hearing, we'll do that daily. So that vow leads to the determination that I'm going to do it. And yeah, and I can speak for myself too. First few days, first few weeks, it's all so gung ho. Want to do it, have a plan. I've, put everything in place, and I'm trying to follow that, and it happens for the first few weeks at least. With that determination, we feel, we're serious. There is clarity in what we're trying to do. There is that determination, and there is the beginning of this new stage in our life as well, right? So it's like, okay, I'm starting this new year, this new calendar year, even though it's just a number, right? Even though it's just a date on the calendar, and even though that calendar is just, a page in our lives, but still it feels that renewed determination. I'm going to be doing this is something that we, internalize, and we put ourselves, to making that happen. Again, after 2 weeks, or within a few weeks for that matter, somehow when the alarm rings, I hit the snooze button. Or, I open the refrigerator and I see ice cream there, and I'm thinking, I'm not supposed to have it, but just today, just once. It's okay. It's okay. Just today, okay? Or the phone buzzes at night, and I want to pick up my phone and I want to see, what is the mail. It could be a work related mail or whatever it is, right? And you're telling yourself, hey, just let me check just quickly, and then I'll put it away, shut it, and then go back to sleep. Or even the reading habit, reading the Bhagavatam, hearing from the Bhagavatam on a daily basis, even that, can slip, and you say, I'm in the middle of this and I'm in the middle of that. Let me do it a little later. I can catch up. I can do it maybe late in the afternoon, or maybe during lunchtime. I can do it. The lunchtime comes and goes, and you're caught up at work or caught up in doing other things, and you forget about that, and suddenly you remember in the evening. And the evening you're doing something else, and you say, you know what? Just before I go to sleep, I'll catch up on that. So things tend to slip. We tend to become complacent, and with complacency comes the forgetfulness as well. So the earlier determination that we started with is forgotten. The vow is forgotten. That clarity that we had, this is why we're doing this. This is what we're doing. This is how I'm going to be doing it. That clarity is forgotten. Most importantly, the purpose itself is forgotten. Why? Because comfort comes back. I'm getting that extra few minutes of sleep, for instance, right? As an example. So with that is basically comforting, and saying, I can have that, that bowl of ice cream that I was really longing for. It makes me feel good. I'm so tired. Let me, just relax a little bit, maybe eat a little bit, maybe sleep a little bit, things that I want to do otherwise. And so with that comes forgetfulness. So the tendency that is innate and intrinsic to us is, as a jiva, that we always are looking for comfort. We're always looking for happiness. Even though we may be in knowledge, we may be aware that that happiness is only for a fleeting moment, right? But we're constantly after, finding a little more uh, comfort somewhere, a little better situation somewhere, a little more happiness somewhere, knowing that happiness is only fleeting. It's transient. It never is permanent in this material world. So in doing so, we're only chasing our tails, and we're spinning around in circle. It's like rowing the boat with the anchor down, right? You can't go too far, and eventually you'll start going round and round and round and round. I mean, you think you're rowing and you see the boat moving, but you're actually not making progress, right? So same thing in the material world. We're so focused on doing these material things, looking for material happiness, or happiness that is purely material. We engage our senses, invest our time in all of these things, that we actually forget the true purpose in our life. So we end up not making any spiritual progress. Therefore, Kapila Muni is saying, Tivrena Bhakti Yogena Manomaya Arpitam Sthiram. Okay, this was in the same canto. Canto 3, Kapila Dev is instructing his mother. And he says, those that are fixed in remembering the Lord are the ones that are practicing devotional service intensely. Right? So they're constantly engaged in devotional service, no matter what their activity on the material plane may look like. It could be, eating, which is really honoring prasadam, or it could be doing your work at home, in the kitchen, or at school, or at the workplace. But you're doing it to please Krishna, doing it in service to Guru and Krishna. So that in itself is engaging in devotional service, right? So as long as we are constantly engaged in devotional service and in that mindset, in that consciousness, Kapila Dev is saying that is the way to perfecting our lives. So Hare Krishna devotees, so that was a prelude. And today we are going to be entering one of the, I would say, emotionally profound sections of the Bhagavatam. Because he's talking about how, the genesis of the embryo, the living entity coming into that embryo, growing within the womb of the mother, and then being introduced into the world outside. I mean, it's a harsh, harsh, harsh reality. And, both within the womb and the passage, from the womb into the real world, and how things change. And that continues even as we grow in this material world day after day after day, which each and every one of us can attest to. It's nothing but a struggle for existence, right? It's a struggle for existence. So in this specific verse, Kapila Dev is explaining or is describing excuse me, the moment of birth. Not from a medical perspective, okay, and not from a social perspective either, but from a jiva's perspective. So the thing is, everyone around is celebrating, right? When the baby is born and people gather around, there are balloons, gifts are being exchanged, people are congratulating everyone. They're all cooing around the baby, saying, "Oh, it's so cute," and this and that. The entire world is celebrating, but the baby is crying, right? That is so ironic. And we don't even spend a moment to think as to why, right? So this verse is actually revealing a very dramatic truth that the soul is thrown helplessly, out of the womb into the real world, which is a world of fear, it's a world of shock, it's a world of bondage. That's the profound aspect of this. Just like a bird is forced, out of its cage into a strange, strange forest, right? Just think about the poor little bird. Just the same way, the baby is so vulnerable at that stage in life. And the baby being introduced to this world, you know, it's such a scary, scary, scary process. If you put yourself really, if you can relate to that, think for a moment and put yourself in there to see what that experience would look like. Just coming out of a complete, the womb where it was very constrained, very secure in one sense, and very dark as well, into something that is nothing but shocking. It is light, a lot of people screaming, talking, it's cold, it's completely a brand new alien environment that the baby is coming into. But all of this is happening, it's not like the baby can say, no, I want to go back. into whatever that was, even if it was not comfortable. But I was used to it. But now I'm having to, being forced into this new world. It's like not out of choice. That's the law of material nature, right? Like in the Bhagavad Gita in chapter 15, it is said, Shariram yat avnapati. Sorry, avapnoti. Shariram yad avapnoti. So as the air carries aromas, the soul is also constantly transmigrating from body to body to body to body. And there's no control over where we are going, unless we have the mercy of the Lord, unless there is a remembrance of the Lord, unless we engage in devotional service so that we can better ourselves, so that we can actually reach. And a lot of discussion we've had, very good discussion we've had over the last few days, even yesterday for that matter, in the Bhagavatam class, where this transmigration to the human life is the ultimate, is the tops. So it takes a lot, millions and millions and millions and millions and millions of lifetimes to be able to get to that point. But that realization is very easily and very quickly forgotten, right? And then we're thrown into this material world without our control because we're not paying attention, right? We're just engaging and doing the same old, same old, same old. Charvita, charvita, nanam. Chewing the chewed, as Prahlad Maharaj says. We're chewing the chewed. We're doing the same things and expecting a different result. That would be insanity, right? By definition. We're chewing the chewed. We're doing the same things and we're not making any progress. Again, it goes back to the anchor in the ground and you're rowing the boat, rowing the boat, rowing the boat. You're going in circles. You're going nowhere. We're just going round and round and round and we're struggling. We're rowing the boat against the resistance of the water. And that is nothing but a struggle, right? We're constantly struggling for this or that or that or this or that during the whole day and day after day after day after day after day. This is our life. You look back, and when I look back, even the last 35, 36 years that I put in at work, I mean, all of that running around and trying to accomplish this and accomplish that, we all tend to be overachievers because of the conditioning, even growing up, we have to do well in school, we got to do well in our workplace, we have to have a successful life. We come to America, we have this American dream, owning your own home, owning this, doing that, being in the going up the corporate ladder. I mean, all of these things start biting away at you, and you're continually obsessed in trying to make that happen. You forget about the more important priorities in life, the main purpose in life. So that struggle is almost like second nature for us now, painfully, not in a nice way. It's a very ugly picture if you look at it. We're constantly struggling, struggling, struggling for existence. I wake up sometimes in the mornings and I'm thinking, oh my God, and my day is starting again. And again, I have to deal with this client of mine. Oh my God, I have to deal with this challenge and that challenge. It's constantly. So why am I doing all of this? When I look back, what have I? I tend to introspect sometimes and I ask myself, what have I really, really achieved? Yeah, titles come and go. Yes, money comes and goes. Yes, comforts come and go. But in the grand scheme of things, when I look back, what is it that really, really, really made a difference? And that's when you realize that all of the things that we put so much prominence to, so much significance that we give during the day, agreed, we still have prescribed duties, we still have to take care of our families, and we have a role to play, whether we are at home, at school, at work. Yes, but we need to put it in perspective. we tend to lose that perspective thanks to Maya, thanks to our material conditioning that comes with Maya, and thanks to the conditioning that's coming over millions of lifetimes. We carry those impressions with us, in the subtle body that transmigrates from body to body, from lifetime to lifetime. So we literally get pushed, we're forced. The word forced is important here because we are pushed. It's not just a gentle nudge. No. When we come into this life, when we take birth, we're pushed, not only physically pushed as the baby is drawn out of the mother's womb. You can imagine how painful and how traumatic that is. The mother is going through trauma, the baby is going through tremendous trauma in that tender physical body. But more than the physicality, think about, how we're being pushed into this real world constantly. And we have absolutely no control. We have absolutely no control unless, like I said, unless we are in Krishna consciousness. And that's what Kapila Muni is telling us, that we should be. It's only those people who are engaged constantly in devotional service are fixed in remembering Krishna, right? That's the only way. It doesn't matter which faith you follow, but the Sanatan Dharma and Krishna himself is saying how important it is for us to be, Sarva Dharman, drop all the other, abandon all other forms of religion, which also includes your Artha Kama. People think religiosity is the ultimate, but that is coming with a lot of ignorance about what that really means, right? And then people get wealth, and then with that religiosity, with dharma, following, doing those pujas and performing those samskaras, without really truly understanding what we're really asking for, and we're asking for things that we really shouldn't be getting, right? And when we get those, what do we do with those? We use them in a way that, so you're getting artha, but we're not using it with the right consciousness. We use it to please our own senses. So there's sense gratification that is happening. And that whole cycle repeats itself, and it just pulls us down and down and down and keeps us in this material world, repeated cycle of birth and death. Such a helpless situation. And we keep getting pushed depending on how we and what we do in this life, we get our next body. Do we have a choice to say, no, 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 I don't want this body, I want that body, no, I want that body? No, the laws of material nature, based on our karma, based on our actions, is forcing us into that. So it is such a terrible situation to be in. So in the previous verses also, Kapiladev has laid out very graphically the realities of the genesis of this material body of us. Our material body starts in a certain form and then starts to develop within the womb of the mother. And when it is time for the baby to come out, the baby is pushed. And he explains how traumatic the womb is, the life in the womb is. It's cramped, it's suffocating, the baby is unable to move. It's floating in, a bag of nauseating fluids. I mean, it's not a pretty situation at all. And the baby, Kaprimuni is saying that the baby, the child remembers, many past births at that time, being in the womb at that point in time. I mean, that's the profound aspect, right? Even yesterday, There was discussion around, how does the baby even remember? How does it even have the intelligence or the maturity, to be able to remember what happened in its previous life? But it is not the physicality, again, it's not the physicality of the body itself, it's the soul that's transmigrating. So it's carrying with it impressions from its previous life. So at that point in time, while the baby is developing in the womb, the soul is within the womb, within the body of the baby, which is in the womb, right? And experiencing all of that. And while it is experiencing all that, it is remembering also, all of the things in its past life, past lives, the past mistakes, the many mistakes. And it's in such a terrible situation that it is, it's praying sincerely to the Lord. It's like, please get me out of this situation. Get me out of this terrible, terrible situation. So this is a moment of forced clarity. Why? Because things are becoming clear, but it is also forced in the sense the situation around us is so terrible that we're calling out to the Lord and saying, Lord, please help, please help, please help. So when things are not going well, it is a lot easier for us to remember the Lord. In fact, Queen Kunti in her prayers begs for the situation to come again and again and again and again, difficult situations, so that she can overcome this material propensity to forget when things are going well, right? When we are in a period of discomfort and a lot of pain, it's much, much easier for us to reach out to the Lord. But when things are going well, we may or may not be in that situation. We may not be that aware of the Lord's presence and what the Lord is giving us. So after undergoing severe tapasya, remembering the Lord, repenting for all of the past mistakes, right? The instant the baby emerges, the soul is overwhelmed by Maya and forgets everything. It's just like a prisoner in jail, right? The prisoner in jail is put through harsh conditions. It's not like VIP treatment, right? They're put to some hard work. And they are given the time to even reflect on the things that they did and they shouldn't have done. And so the prisoner is thinking to myself, you know what? I know I made a mistake here. He may not say it out, but he's thinking to himself, I made mistakes. I shouldn't have done that. This is bad. This was bad on my part. I am promising that, when I get out of jail, I will be a different person. But the problem is, the moment the prisoner gets out of jail, he's again back in his old environment and he's back to his old habits, right? Very soon, everything is forgotten. So all that suffering in the jail is forgotten and lands in jail again. So a lot of them are repeat offenders as well. So it's the same situation for the jiva, all of us. We go through a terrible situation in the womb, and then once we come out, we very, very quickly, due to the conditioning, due to the external energy, due to the influence of Maya, we forget, right? And then we get into this whole cycle of looking for happiness in this material world. So even in the Bhagavad Gita, Krishna tells Arjuna, right? He says, many births have passed. Many, 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 many births have passed. You have forgotten, but I remember. So forgetfulness is the hallmark of the conditioned soul. Not that Arjuna is, but Arjuna is demonstrating the example, right, of this jiva that we are, where in this material world, forgetfulness is very easy for us. It's almost like a natural extension of ourselves. So imagine living in this warm darkness and then suddenly we are being dragged out by force, right? What happens first of all, it's too blinding. So we were trying to cover our eyes. It's too bright. It hurts our eyes. It's just a terrible transition. Not just the situation we were in. We're going from one bad situation to a situation that is even worse, actually. And the transition itself is so bad. We're being forced. It's like a person is sleeping peacefully, it's the lights all out, there's some very soft music playing in the background or japa happening in the background, and suddenly, this person is dragged outside into the sunlight, bright sunlight, right, midsummer. What happens? It's traumatic for that person who is asleep. So back again, the Gita is also reinforcing that and telling us that the soul has no control. It's just moved from body to body to body. It's almost like it's it's being forced to without any control for the jiva itself. The jiva does not choose the moment of birth. It doesn't say, I want to come out at this particular time, and does not, and the jiva is not able to say, I want to be in this situation or that family. It doesn't have any of that. We are just given this body by the laws of material nature and our karma, right? So digging a little deeper, double clicking on this a little more, this that the profound aspect of this is that babies cry not only due to physiological factors, but because the soul is shocked, as we were discussing, right? It is shocked, it's afraid, it's aware. Here's the important part. It's aware of its bondage. It's not like, the soul is being introduced and it finds itself in the spiritual world, right? But instead, it finds itself in a hospital room, right, in Naperville with a lot of people around. There's a white coat that's floating around, which is the doctor. There are a few nurses that are screaming, and there's a lot of activity happening, screaming in the sense, saying, "Oh, the baby is crying. That's a great, 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 thing because the baby is alive and kicking." Whereas it is just the opposite for the soul, for the baby. So Kapila Muni is saying the baby is crying because suddenly it's feeling hunger, it's feeling thirst, it's exposed to the dualities. And suddenly, it's losing the clarity of the womb. It was so used to, even though it was very constrained, it became a place that the baby was very familiar with. So it was feeling very secure. And suddenly Maya's covering begins. So while the doctor or the nurse, is saying, "Oh, it's very good. The baby is crying," and then beats the baby a little more, pats it on the back a little more, and baby is crying louder, and the baby and the midwife or the nurse in this case is saying, "Oh, it's very good. It's very good. We have a healthy baby here." But the Bhagavatam is saying that the baby cried because the soul is frightened and all shook up because it's aware of the bondage, because it's coming back into the material world. Uh-oh. We thought we were done in our previous life and the previous life to that and previous to that and previous to that and previous to that. But now here I am, I'm back in the material world. So the soul is like cringing and saying, "Oh my God, what is this?" And all for what? Because we are constantly engaging in our material senses with the material sense objects in finding something a little more comfortable, looking for that piece of happiness, that moment of happiness, which is so transient. So even Prahlad Maharaj says material happiness is simply a concoction. Suffering is inevitable. That is this material existence, right? So within moments of birth, right, conditioning happens. That's what Prabhupada is also reaffirming and telling us. Immediately, the infant, right, the baby is always thinking of, "Ah, I like this, I don't like that." right? Comfort zones. And as the baby starts to see that the vision is still very blurry, it's trying to look around, make sense of what's going on. Even colors are not possible at that moment, right? For the first several weeks, it's still very black and white. And the baby is trying to identify, who the mother is and forming a bond, and there are things that are constantly and very rapidly evolving even in the baby's mind, right? So that is a part of the conditioning that is happening even as we speak in real time, right? So the mother becomes the first object of affection, right? It's the first object of security for the baby. Then the baby is starting to misidentify the body, the misconceptions start to play in. And then the world outside becomes the new playground, right? It's trying to explore as the baby is getting bigger, becomes a toddler. It's like exploring, what there is in this world. And again, the senses are being engaged with the sense objects. And all this is conditioning, right? It's the layer of illusion covering the soul's original consciousness, right? It's just like taking, a clear crystal and dropping it into a fluid that has a dye in it, right? And then if you look through that crystal, the crystal is going to take on the color of that dye, right? So the filter is that of the color of the dye in that fluid. Similarly, the soul entering the body, entering the body becomes colored by the senses. So here's the paradox, right? So what's sobering about this whole process of entering the world is the paradox of birth. Everybody, like I was saying, everybody celebrates on the outside, right? The external world, the mother, the relatives, the friends, whoever is there, visiting, while the baby is just been introduced to the new world. Everybody's celebrating, but the baby is crying, you know. And why this contradiction? See, so the relatives are seeing the body of the baby, right? They're seeing baby as a body and say, "Oh, so sweet, so cute. Oh, look, this baby looks like the mother, or looks like the grandfather, or whatever," right? But the Shastra is seeing the soul. The relatives are seeing the baby as a body, but the Shastra tells us, "Hey, this is not the body; it's the soul," right? The society is seeing the beginning of life, whereas Shastra is saying, "Oh, this is a recurrence of bondage. We're going through it lifetime after lifetime. Oops, you've come back again into this material world." See the contrast. So it's such a contradiction. In fact, Rishabdev also in the fifth canto is talking about how worldly life is like a blind well, right? So even now in India, if you go into the rural areas, there are places where wells have been abandoned and they just cover them with grass. It's such a dangerous thing in a sense, right? You won't even know that there's the well. That's why it's called a blind well. So life, this worldly life, is like that. People think entering this new world is, hey, it's yours for you to conquer. I came, I saw, I conquered, right? Vidi vici vinci. I think that's what Julius Caesar said. I came, I saw, I conquered. So for them, the world is a playground. The world is a place, right, for trying something out, learning something new, being able to accomplish, being able to become successful, right? So it is like an opportunity. It's like a great thing happening. What they don't see, the same people, is that it is a place of danger, right? And Shastras very clearly explain, give us so many examples. So without Krishna consciousness, family life Work life and life in general in this material world is nothing but like a blind well, right? It's just a blind well that's covered with grass. It may have attractive coverings, whether it's a dress, a home, a house, a car, or a prestigious job, right? You could have a corner office, but it's like a blind well. I mean, at the end of the day, in the grand scheme of things, when I look back, all of these things, you tend to wonder, if it was really worth it in terms of doing this. I mean, and still, again, don't get me wrong. I'm not saying, there are some prescribed duties, and you have to set some goals for yourself to at least, not become a burden to society. So you want to be able to take care of yourself, take care of your family, raise a family. But then doing it with the right consciousness is super, super important. And I think that is something that we need to remind ourselves constantly. So, though birth is traumatic, it is also a huge opportunity if you look at it, right? What this is leading up to and what Kapila Dev is trying to say is, see, Kapila Dev is giving this graphic description not from a scientific perspective, okay? And he's not trying to scare us or trying to scare us for the reasons, to make it sound dramatic in that sense. No, this whole graphic description of the passage, actually from starting from the Genesis or the birth or the entry of the soul into this embryo and the life of the embryo and all of those details that he's covered through the passage out into the world is so graphically presented in Kapila Dev's description, right, in these verses. But what is important for us to take away is that Krishna is giving us an opportunity. So Krishna is giving us a new body. He's giving us a new environment. He's giving us new experiences, right? But most importantly, he's giving us a chance to turn towards him, to come to him. He's saying, okay, you made some mistakes, fine. Here's another chance. Here's another chance. Do it. Every single time, as Balram Prasad Prabhu was saying yesterday in the discussion, this person is given chance after chance after chance, lifetime after lifetime, and it's the person is blowing it away, and that's basically what we're doing. We're literally throwing away that chance to actually get back or go back to Godhead, back to Krishna, back to the spiritual world. In the Gita, Krishna says, I give the remembrance and the forgetfulness in, right, 15:15 of the Bhagavad Gita. So, trauma of the birth can be very, very, very debilitating. Okay, if we continue to remember, I mean, you just imagine in one sense. Okay, so the baby is going through this traumatic experience. The baby comes out into the world. And now, if the baby were to grow with that memory of what it was like being in the womb of the mother, in that darkness, in the nauseating fluid that it is floating in for months, and then making its passage, a difficult, difficult passage out into the real world. I mean, that can be so debilitating to a point that the baby would say, I don't want to see this world. I don't want to be a part of this world. I just want to go back in one sense, right? Wants to just stay away from this whole thing at the same time. It is not wanting to go back into the womb of the mother. I mean, it is very debilitating. It's fighting on both sides. It doesn't want to go back to its old paradigm. It doesn't want to, move into the new world where everything is new. So it can be very debilitating in that sense. So Krishna is so merciful that he gives us forgetfulness also, right? To overcome that trauma. I mean, an example that comes to my mind is, how debilitating it can be for a person who's been through a car accident, for instance. God forbid, you know, it shouldn't happen to anybody, but accidents do happen, and that's why they call accidents, right? Uh, my sister got into an accident where, she was driving in Wisconsin with her baby, in the back seat, actually a little toddler at that point in time, and came onto, she skidded on black ice, and, the car went toppling and all of that. So that was luckily nothing happened to both of them. They survived, they were fine by Krishna's grace. But that memory stayed on to a point that even to this day, she does not drive onto the highway. She will only take the back roads, anything that is within a mile or two within the home. She's so, so, so paranoid about driving. She hasn't even let the child, her daughter, grow up. Now the daughter's almost 40 years old. That is the extreme of paranoia, right? And that's how extremely debilitating, an accident like that can be, that experience. So what I'm saying is that Krishna is giving us forgetfulness about all the trauma that we've been through in our previous lives and also coming into this world for a reason. So that he's giving us a chance for us to move on to better things, to be able to correct some of the things that we did wrong. So using that forgetfulness is Krishna's gift to us, right? But how we use that forgetfulness to remember him is our gift to Krishna. Now that may sound like an oxymoron, right? How can forgetfulness and remembrance be used in the same sentence or the same thought? That's true, right? So Krishna is giving us, he's causelessly merciful. He's giving us that mercy. He's saying, here, take it. I'm giving you another chance. I'm giving you forgetfulness so that you can forget all of the nonsense that you've done in your previous life, all of the, the trauma that you've been through in terms of coming into this life, into this body. What we do with that forgetfulness to remember Krishna, right? So we are trying not to invest in those things that we shouldn't be remembering, but rather investing our consciousness in remembering Krishna and engaging in devotional service. That is our gift back to Krishna because we cannot give Krishna anything else. Krishna has everything. He doesn't need anything else. He is not, you know, he's all potent, right? He's omnipotent. He has everything. He doesn't need. He's richer than the richest. He's powerful and more powerful than anybody anywhere in creation. He doesn't need anything. But yet he's giving us that opportunity. And all that we can give him as tiny, 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 insignificant souls is to be at least be able to remember him and be, grateful. Krishna, you've given me this life. Let me correct myself in this life. Right? And that is essentially the difference also, right? The consciousness that we carry in this human body is very different than the consciousness an animal has, for instance. And we've spoken about this, we've heard about this multiple times. But are we really doing that? I mean, yes, yes and no. We try, we do, and then we forget. We try, we do, and we forget. Day after day, week after week, year after year, January 1st, my birthday, So these events happen so that they kind of strike your memory. And they say, hey, wake up. Remember? You actually made a commitment to do this. And so this is happening. And these chances are coming from Krishna to us. He's causelessly giving it to us. Here, take it. Please do something about it. So, And let me even read this. Actually, there's a very nice verse that I came across while I was preparing for this class, where Krishna is telling Uddhava. Let me pull that up, right? See, this is in Canto 11, where Krishna is telling Uddhava, he's saying, "My dear Uddhava, because I've personally established it, this process of devotional service unto me is transcendental and free from any material motivation. Certainly, a devotee never suffers even the slightest loss by adopting this process." So, where I'm going with this is Krishna is not only giving us an opportunity lifetime after lifetime after lifetime. Even during the lifetime, we fall and then Krishna is picking us up. We fall and Krishna is picking us up. But Krishna is also importantly giving us that assurance that even if there is, okay, we got up now and I remember you, Krishna, I'm engaging in devotional service, I'm doing this tiny little bit of service somewhere in the day of my life. Even that Krishna is saying, I will remember that. I will accept it. Isn't that amazing? And Krishna is saying, whatever you give me and whatever you're doing in your life in terms of offering it to me, that is never going to suffer a diminution. It is never going to suffer a loss. It stays with you lifetime after lifetime after lifetime. So it's not like, we're going to do this in this lifetime and with everything else, and the next lifetime it's forgotten, gone. We start all over again. No. Krishna is saying even that, I will take care of it. I will remember everything for you. I will make sure that your credit stays, even if you move from this body to another body to another body. That stays. And there are numerous examples throughout the Bhagavatam that give us that assurance that any amount of devotional service, big or small, it could be totally, totally, totally insignificant, but just engaging in devotional service, that in itself is going to be added to our credits, our spiritual credits, which will never go away. They will always be with us, with the soul. And Krishna is himself giving this assurance. So Kapiladev is describing this journey of the living entity is graphically also to strike up a sense of urgency to begin with, right? To say that this is such a terrible and scary place that you don't want to go back to this situation. Please don't go back to this situation. We must feel that and say, I must do something about it. I do not want to go back to that situation. But he's also giving us a solution. He's also telling us, engage in devotional service. This whole thing, the instructions of Kapiladev to his mother, to all of us, is engage in devotional service. That is the way to do it. So detach yourself from all of these material sense objects because the mind is uncontrolled, right? Adanta Gobir, as Prahlad Maharaj says these senses are uncontrolled. So therefore, the best way to do that is not by artificially getting rid of those attachments to the material senses, but attachment. So you're detaching yourself from the material sense objects by attaching yourself to Krishna, by spontaneously, by willingly, lovingly, unconditionally saying, Krishna, I want to get attached. You're rechanneling your desires or desires that are there in each and every one of us at every moment of our life. Desires are constantly biting away at us and prompting us to do this, do that, think of this, think of that. And so, how do I channel all of that? Take the same, motivations that I have on the material plane and channel that towards Krishna instead, right? Whether it is cooking for Krishna or doing something for Krishna. This morning as I was making my offering, very insignificant, but as I was cutting the fruit and placing them in the bowl to offer to Krishna, it just hit me, I could have done this, just cut, put, cut and put, cut and put. But I said, no, that's more like a mechanical chore, right? Instead, putting the fruit in a way that is pleasing to Krishna. Even the presentation. In fact, what comes to my mind is many years ago, Chandramohan Maharaj was visiting us in Oswego, and I was serving him prasadam in his quarters in the house in Oswego, and he looked at it and he said, Sri Vallabha, 50% of what is being offered is presentation. Presentation. So that means what he was saying was that we need to put our mind and heart into what is being offered. Even the offering that we're doing, if we put ourselves to, consciously doing something to please Krishna, Krishna will be so much more pleased, so much more pleased. So even the littlest of things, just, in this case, arranging the fruit in a way that is more presentable, right? And you present it to Krishna, as Chandramouli Maharaj was saying, 50% of the benefit of the offering is also in the way that it is presented, right? How we arrange the food, how the food is made, how the food is, placed properly in the plate, and how the offering itself is made. These are things that are all part of the presentation. And even the presentation, when it is done from the heart, it is not done to show. I mean, see, we have these instances where we don't even think about these things. We just get caught up in, the whole schedule of, I need to get this done by this time, and this by this time, and this by this. So we're running from one event to another event to another event, one task to another task to another task, and we lose that feeling, that affection, that spontaneous feeling of a loving exchange, right? That we're doing this for Krishna. Yeah. In that respect, I offer my humble obeisances to our devotees that are, on the altar, and so beautifully, so meticulously, so lovingly they dress our deity, Sri Radha Shyam Sundar. It's such a blissful sight just being there to be able to observe. And when we're there, look at the detail, observe. Dhananjay Pandit Prabhu would always tell me, you're not just standing in front of the deities asking for this or that, but to be able to recognize, realize, and become aware how of how intricately and how lovingly, how with so much detail the dressing is done for the lordships, how they are, adorned with these lovely flowers, the jewelry, and everything is matched, coordinated, how much thought has gone into it, and then being able to execute on that. And the deities are beautiful, but they become even more beautiful when they're pleased, with the services that are being offered to them. So that's a huge takeaway. When you're standing there in front of the altar, you're looking at the deities. It's not about asking for anything. It's more about appreciating and becoming aware and being inspired that these wonderful devotees have pleased Krishna and, Radha and Shyam Sundar so much that they're looking so beautiful. They're looking so brilliant. So that feeling has to come right into us from head to toe, you know. And you just stay absorbed in that because the material conditioning is so strong. The moment we step away from the altar, unfortunately, all these things start to hit us, and then we're back to complaining, or we're back to criticizing, we're back to this or that, caught up in this, caught up in that, and we get distracted, right? That lovely feeling is no longer there. So just at least while we're there, be in the moment. As Guru Maharaj says, be in the moment. Be in the moment. And that in itself can be a huge challenge for us with the busy lives that we're leading. Okay, I know I'm going a little over time here, but in closing, just put yourself in the situation. We were once this helpless child, right? We were crying in fear, and we've taken so many births. let's this be the last one. Let this lifetime be the last one. So just meditate on that and say, it's just been a terrible journey so far. I don't want to come back to this dark, dark, dark blind well anymore. This is my last life. I want to end it here. I want to come back to you, Krishna. So let us end with gratitude to our spiritual master, to the sadhu sangha that we have, to the Shastras, to thank and gratitude to Srila Prabhupada, for giving us what he's given us, this awareness. Otherwise, we could have all of the biggest credentials in life, a lot of the accomplishments that otherwise are materially super successful. But thank you, dear spiritual master. Thank you, Srila Prabhupada. Thank you, Kapila Muni, in this verse, in this chapter, for opening our eyes to the soul's true journey so that we can recognize and realize the importance of engaging with Krishna and how importantly Krishna has given us this opportunity for us to be able to use our free will in his service as the best way to overcome everything that is happening in this material world, but more importantly, going back to him, going back to the spiritual world. So, with that, let's see if there is any discussion and um, see if you have any thoughts, comments.
Hare Krishna Prabhu. Thank you.
Hare Krishna Prabhu.
So I was just thinking from the beginning of your class about the forgetfulness of the living entity, right? I mean, I don't, and this question is keep coming to me for last few days with this section, right? So I mean, I don't know, the free will that the living entity has is a kind of a I mean, it's not a blessing. It doesn't look like that, right? I mean, it's like
Yeah.
I mean, after realizing so much and again forgetting it, it is like so. I mean, so much painful. I mean, I was just thinking, what is it the Lord is promising that once the living entity says, like Lord Ramachandra says, yeah, if the living entity comes and says that I am yours, or right, I will never leave that soul, right? Like Vibhishana's example.
Yeah.
So I was thinking because I'm sure many devotees or many living entities, right, would have done that, right? But then again, they're getting into the normal materialistic way of life. Not all of them, at least some of them, right? I mean, or many of them. So, what is it that the Lord's promise in that case? Because it's even in this case, Kapila Muni is allowing the soul to see the Lord, super soul within the next to him, within the same mother's womb, and again after coming that from the womb and going through the trauma, right, and then after delivery, and again forgetting it. So, what is that the Lord's promise holds in that case, right? The forgetfulness of the that whole thing. I mean, I know it is a blessing. I mean, remembrance and forgetfulness comes from the Lord. What is it? What is it? Because how is it is a in that sense? I understand that the pains that the living entity cannot remember, then it will be so challenging to live. But in this case, I was just trying to understand, Prabhu, how is it helping the living entity?
So help me understand your question a little better. So you're saying in terms of the Lord's promise, saying that, hey, I'm right next to you as the Paramatma feature?
No, no, no. I
Ah,
mean, coming to Him, right? Close to Him, going back to Godhead in that
yeah,
sense. So, how
yeah,
the living entity is forgetting, right? I mean, for example, all of us would have said many times, or many times when we are hearing from a great devotees and all, we know, I mean, that yeah, I don't want to be in this world. I mean, even after hearing these things, right? We want to go back. I mean, maybe sometimes, maybe very strong, it comes out very strongly, right? I mean, even from each of us being in this moment of Srila Prabhupada because reading his books and all, right, going through the challenges of the material life and all, right? But again, after some time, we get fall prey to that our old habits,
yeah,
right? So, how is that forgetfulness of that challenges that we went through, right? And remembering the Lord that we are remembering and wanted to go back to God, yet again we are forgetting that.
yeah,
How is that is a kind of good for us? I was just thinking. So,
yeah. All right, so one thing we need to realize is the it's happening because of a lot of it. It's happening because of the conditioning, right? That conditioning is coming from the material energy. And that material energy is Maya, who is doing her job so beautifully. I mean, she is, after all, representing the external energy of the Lord. And what are we? We are nothing, right? We're not even insignificant. We're less than insignificant to the minus infinity level, right? So the material energy is super, 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 super powerful, right? And so therefore it is able to overpower, overcome, and we're not able to, in that sense, we are forgetfulness is becoming very, very normal to us. We don't even remember to think, or we don't even pause to think, hey, we're forgetting something, right? Even that thought doesn't come to us. If that thought comes to us, at least we'll say, okay, what are we forgetting? Right? And then we can start to remember, oh, you know what? I should be forgetting the bad, and I should be remembering what I should be doing to come closer to Krishna. So that's why Kapila Muni is saying that, the Bhagavatam is saying that, chapter after chapter after chapter, is that by engaging in devotional service is Krishna's mercy to us. He's giving us, I mean, we're so fortunate that we're, even today, we're talking about this, right? So that in itself is remembrance. The moment there is remembrance, then there is devotional service. The moment there is devotional service, there is remembrance. So they constantly are feeding each other. And then, as Prabhupada, a devotee was asking Srila Prabhupada, what do you pray? Because when he saw Prabhupada was intensely praying, he was doing doing dandavats in front of the altar. So the devotee observing that later asked Srila Prabhupada, what were you doing? I mean, what do you pray when you're already there? What do you pray? And you were so intense, Srila Prabhupada. So Srila Prabhupada smiled and said, look, you have to remember that anybody in this material world can fall. So I constantly beg the Lordships to keep me from falling down, right? So that powerful this conditioning is. For Srila Prabhupada to say that, what to speak of me, right? So that's the kind of consciousness that, yeah, we need to somehow get ourselves, and that can only happen through practice. And that's why Srila Prabhupada has so beautifully given us this practice of Krishna consciousness, because no matter what you're doing, you're constantly in service by nature, right? Yesterday, the whole day just flew by. It was a weekend after a long week, but Ruchira and I woke up early in the morning and we were caught up in several different Govindas related activities from morning 5:30 or 6 all the way through, late in the evening. And it was just going on and on and on and on. I was like my falling apart, literally saying, Ruchira, don't put me through anymore. My body is not cooperating, please. But she's like, no, 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 we've got to get this done. And so as we were doing this, and we were doing this with that consciousness, we have to make Govinda's work. This is for Sri Radha Shamsun, that we have to do this. And so when we were doing that, you're constantly engaged in that, then all the other thoughts are gone, right? So practice of Krishna consciousness is so very important, Prabhu. So I don't know if I answered your question, but I'm saying, on the one hand, Krishna is very merciful, giving us that forgetfulness. It's important because if we don't forget the bad things, we will be caught up in that. So when you think of the bad things and you get caught up in that, you just dwell on that, right? And it kind of prevents you from taking that step forward. If you slip down the stairs and that thought keeps coming back, oh man, when I slipped down the stairs, it hurt me so badly. You will never, go down the stairs again. You will probably take the lift or the elevator to go down, right? But Krishna is giving us that forgetfulness so that we can move on. And in that sense, he's saying, I'm also giving you the free will. What you do with that free will is, up to you. And that's where, he's saying, I'm giving you the tools. I'm giving you that, free will so that you can apply yourself in remembering me, in applying yourself in devotional service. So that way you can completely negate all the bad things that have happened. All the karma that you accumulated is gone. I'll take care of that. You come back to me. I will take care of that. See, that's the beauty. He's giving us forgetfulness on the one hand. He's also giving us a remembrance of what we need to be doing in terms of devotional service. I don't know if I answered your question, Prabhu.
Yes, Prabhu, thank you. I know it is a time actually, so
Yeah, yeah, yeah,
8:45.
yeah,
So
absolutely. Yeah.
thank
But
you so much.
thank you, Prabhu. If there's nothing else, I think we can.
Yeah.
Thank you so much, Prabhu.
Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna.